I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, welcome once again to Pine Mountain, Georgia, at the luxurious Foxworthy Farms. And that snicker you just heard, that was Jeff Foxworthy.
Well, I didn't listen to that crowd. I don't know how luxurious it is, but this old barn makes a fun little hunting cabin.
It does. It's a fantastic. I'd love to hear the whole story of the history of this one day. But let me kind of set the table real quick, because sitting next to you is Mr. Flip Pallot, he's just an outdoors legend. He really is. We're so happy he's killed his biggest deer today. He's going to tell us that story in a little bit. We're going to talk about deer. We've also got, through the magic of Zoom, and we just cross our fingers that we won't lose him during this process, but we got Toxie.
That's right, Bobby, and I'm crossing my fingers you do lose me, so I got stuff to do.
Yeah, there we go. And to my right, we've got Dudley Phelps. So
hey guys,
we're excited to have. Waiting in the wings is Glenn Garner. If we've got any
if for whatever reason can't honor their contract on this podcast, he's ready to jump in.
Stepping in. That's right. So, and look, before we get started, I want to look at Richie and John and say thank y'all. You've been working like madmen over here trying to get all the wires together. And I'm going to let you have the applause for yourself. John, thank y'all. And Richie, y'all did a great job. Mm-hmm. So, look, it's a pretty special day. Jeff, I don't know where you've been the last couple of days, but we've been down here working hard trying to get Mr. Flip a deer. Glenn we've been doing this and doing that. But this morning, we get a text. And would you kind of tell a little bit of the story of in that accent about a piper is dead?
So did you ever see the movie So I Married an Axe Murderer?
I've heard of it, but I didn't see it.
It's Mike Myers,
yeah,
who's a fabulous comedian, and he played the part of himself in the movie, but he also played the part of his father, who was a old Scottish man who had been married 50 years and was celebrating his 50-year anniversary, and they were getting remarried, I think is what they were doing, and they were having it in a typical Scottish ceremony, and they had bagpipers, and the bagpiper comes out of the audience, and he's playing the bagpipes just so hard and so loud, and everybody's dancing and cheering the bagpiper, and all of a sudden you can see he's running out of breath, and he loses his breath, and he passes out and keels over. And Mike Myers, who's now playing his own father, with this huge Scottish accent, which I cannot do, but I do it well enough to satisfy Bobby. So he takes the microphone and announces to the audience there, he says, "We have a piper down." And so I was watching the movie with this old friend of mine that I hunt with a lot. And we were laughing and everything. And the next day we were hunting. We were watching it in a deer camp we had gotten the old tape, VHS tape. Mm-hmm. We were watching an old tape. The next day we're hunting, and we were separated where we were hunting. And remember the old Nextel telephones where you beep, everything like this. So I shot a deer, and I beeped my buddy Rob, and I said, "We have a piper down." And so it just got to be it now. Every time he'd kill a deer, I'd kill a deer, and then we had a couple of other friends got onto it, and they'd be hunting somewhere else. We'd be 1,000 miles apart, and we'd get a text or something that says, "We have a piper down." So it just became a thing, So today when I had told Bobby the story, so this morning when I killed that deer, I sent Bobby a text. "We have a piper down."
Yeah. That made me smile when I got it. So, Jeff, you guys, we're going to talk about how deer have just made us all, we just all love them so much, and the effort that we go to. But you've got a bunch of guys you hunt with, a big group of guys that you hang out with. Y'all have got a lot of funny things that y'all do to each other, and probably make comments as well when somebody kills something, or along those lines, I would think.
Oh my word, yeah. And it's funny how little things like that become part of the vernacular. Like when during hunt week, nobody's on a diet anymore. You know, the 51 weeks of the year, you're trying not to get too fat. And then hunt week, that table over there is loaded with every kind of Little Debbie, which I do not eat the other 51 weeks of the year, but
Right.
during that week, just gorgeous. And they make one late in the year called a Christmas cake.
Mm.
And we started singing a stupid song, "Oh, Christmas cake, oh, Christmas cake." And so you be sitting in the stand and somebody will text, "Oh, Christmas cake, oh, Christmas cake." And you're up there trying to be, you've been quiet for 2 hours and you just start giggling and you can't stop laughing. But that's part of it. That's, and I know there's guys that go out there and do it on their own, but it's something about that bonding, that shared experience, you know, because like when I started getting a little bit of like recognition, people would invite me to go hunt all over the country, and I would almost always turn it down because to me it wasn't where I was going or what I was hunting, it was who I was hunting with. And I wanted to hunt with my friends because I knew whether you got a deer or an elk or whatever you were hunting, doves, it didn't matter, ducks, you were still gonna have a good time. It wasn't the destination that was oriented. It was the journey of the whole thing. And I think that's what that is.
Yeah,
a piper down. It's part of it's the beautiful little journey of it all.
No doubt. Me and my friends have a joke about, again, watching hunting shows when we were younger. There was these Northerners, and they shot a deer, and they called his buddy. And he says, "You get one?" And he said, "I got a trophy doe."
A trophy doe.
And so now we always, it's every doe we shoot is a trophy doe. So same story.
We got to do that because we said, nobody would ever tell you shot a crappy buck. So when you do shoot a crappy buck, you know it because the other guys look at it and go, "That's going to be some good eating right there." That's the nicest thing they can say about it.
That one's got a lot of fat on it.
Yeah, boy, look at the fat.
Hey, Toxie, the club Choctaw Bluff, y'all had a little tradition down there when a hunt's over with. What was it called? You were on the rack, and you had to tell the story.
Well, things the deer season was, they had the Kangaroo court, and after every day of hunting, and of course, there was you get up there and, I guess someone charged you with missing one and you had to get up there and defend yourself and all, but then they try to get out of, but they had this thing and it was, of course, it was I won't say what it meant was basically, but if they said, okay, it was as a last resort. It's kind of like a court of law, but it's like, you're on the rack now, then you would have to fess up and tell them what it is. And if you missed a deer or two or whatever, they cut your shirt tail pretty bad. And it was a lot of fun and frivolity for sure. A lot of laughing, and it was a really cool tradition. I think there's a lot of old school camps in the South, at least I know of, that's been kind of a tradition. Is somebody misses a deer, you have a little ceremony and cut the shirt. Some of them will cut the shirt, slam off of them, and get carried away with it. But yeah, we did that. In the spring, they had a different thing though. That was like whenever everybody was out turkey hunting. At 11 o'clock every morning, and you had to be back by then. They called it turkey tails. That was a whole different. That was a serious thing, though. It was like everybody told their story and what happened. So, but yeah, we did that.
Yeah, boy,
listen to you, Jeff. I've been a couple of times and seen you do your thing, and honestly, I have to plug my ears up because I'm hurting so bad. and and it's uncontrollable laughter. So it's amazing. But the funniest stuff I've ever seen and the most entertaining is watching you interact with your inner sanctum of hunting buddies. That's actually so priceless. I don't think you could ever, you can't really show it to people. I think about seeing the stuff when you called about that deer and you're telling everybody, oh my God, I killed Will Smith. And people think you're some kind of axe murderer or something,
Yeah, I should have picked a better name for that deer.
Yeah, there's somebody monitoring this call now, but honestly, they jump on you, and those guys are right in there as funny as you are in camp. And the lesson for everybody is what you said is like, enjoy the moment and the times. The deer hunting's going to be what it is anyway. Why not get the most out of all of it? And I think the other thing is, especially with your crew, I will say it's similar to our crew in that nobody had better take themselves too serious. Nobody, not me, not you, not anybody, because the rest of them are like a bunch of hyenas.
But you think back, why did we get into it in the first place? It was because it was fun.
Absolutely.
It was fun. Going on a dove hunt was fun, and it's the same reason I got into what I do for a living. I enjoyed it. It was fun. And I think if it ever gets to the point that it's not fun, that's probably a little red flag where you need to stop and go, what am I doing different? How did I lose the joy of this?
Yeah.
And for me, and I think part of it is a natural thing that comes with aging and all, but I get a bigger kick now out of watching somebody else have a significant hunting moment than me having one myself. I'm like, I'll be fine to shoot does and trophy does, and cull bucks, because I've felt that. I know what that feels like to kill a big buck. I'm not saying I wouldn't enjoy doing it myself, but
sure,
I enjoy watching somebody else do it.
That's a stage that you're in.
Yeah, that's fun.
So look, we want to before we get Flip to tell the story this morning, I want to circle back to you in that little Debbie comment. True or false? Your brother Jay, I heard rumor that one night he ate everything that everything little Debbie makes. He ate one.
Well, Larry Burns made that happen because he could talk you into doing anything in his subtle little way, and I think it started as innocently as Jay going, you know what's a good follow-up to an oatmeal pie is a nutty bar. And Larry goes, hey, let me tell you what's a great follow-up to a nutty bar is a zebra cake. And then Jay got up and started doing that. And then after a while, we start going, he's going to make him run the table. He's going to run the table, and
he was getting out of bed to go.
He'd already brushed his teeth twice, and then you go. What what's the jelly rolls, and then it would be
Swiss roll,
Swiss roll, and then it would be look. There's only 13 possible kinds, and you've already eaten 10 of them. Who do you know can say they ate one of every little kind of Little Debbie in a night? Go get a zebra cake, or go get a jelly roll. And so he ran the table.
That must be kind of a Georgia thing.
Well, the next day they did make him. We were the next day we were playing cards, and he left the card table to go to the bathroom, and he came back a little while later, about 20 minutes later, and he said. Jimmy, do y'all have a plunger? And of course, we can't even play anymore because we're laughing so hard at that. And Jimmy went and found him the plunger and gave it to him. And Jay went away. About 20 minutes later, he came back and said, Jimmy, do y'all have a mop? So there is a price to pay for running the table. Let's just leave it at that.
Goodness gracious.
I'll rest my case.
Yeah. Point made.
Big time.
Well, Mr. Flip, that's going to be a hard story to follow. But at some point, we've got to hear the story of your deer this morning. So we might as well start now.
Well, I've only told it 20 or 30 times so far, here and on the telephone to others.
Well,
but,
it ain't even getting good. Yeah, when you wait 2 years down the road, it's going to be so much better.
I promise I'll work on it. Anyhow, it turned out to be my career deer. And I just learned, Sam told me that it weighed 185 pounds dressed off. So that deer had to be 2 1/4 or 230. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, probably.
Something like that.
Wow.
So Sam took us this morning and dropped us off on a power line and told us to watch the right-hand end of the field where there was a bottom and a bunch of weeds that the deer were running across. So we did that. Rich and I sat up there, carried our chairs. We just had Yeti chairs. We weren't in a blind or anything. We set the chairs down. I sat down in my chair immediately. I mean, this happened as fast as I'm uttering the words. I opened my backpack to take a thermos of coffee out.
Of course.
And I got tapped on the shoulder. I mean, this is 30 seconds, a minute. That's all it was. And Rich tapped me on the shoulder. And he said, "There's a buck over there to the left on the wood line." And I looked over there, and sure enough, there was a buck standing there looking at us. He had, I guess, been standing there, watched us walk from the truck out on the edge of the field in the broom sage to where we just sat the chairs down. And he was just standing there looking at us. He wasn't doing anything. And it was a long ways. I mean, I was not happy about the distance. But he began to walk out into the field, not feeding, but walking across the field to that little drive where Sam had dropped us off. And I thought, he's walking across the field. I'm not gonna get a shot at this guy. But he stopped, still looking at us, facing me. And I thought, well, he's going to take off any minute because he was looking right at us. And so I just shot him in the brisket because he wasn't giving me anything else. And I thought he might take off any minute. And so, boom, shot him in the brisket, and he spun around and ran back in the woods. And they were calling for rain. We didn't find any blood because I shot him square in the brisket, and the bullet just went right in, and there was no exit wound or anything to bleed. So there was no blood. We looked and looked and looked for an hour or better for a running track or a jump track or something like that. Couldn't find anything. So we called Glenn to see if there was a puppy available that we could put on the trail, because we knew right exactly. Rich had filmed it, and we could look in the camera and see exactly where that deer had run into the woods. So Glenn came, and he said, "Well, we can call for a puppy." He said, "But let's just walk." We didn't want to walk into the woods on the trail because we thought a dog might be involved. We didn't want to foul the dog up. So Glenn said, "Well, let's just walk down the trail." There was a trail where you could see his running track on it. And it led down, I'm sure you know exactly where, there was a gas line down in the woods running parallel to the power line, exactly. And he ran down in the bottom toward that power line on a pretty obvious trail, deer trail. And you could see his hoof strikes along the trail. And Glenn walked down in there about, 50 yards maybe. And there he lay dead. So it was, everything happened so fast. And I thought, and I mentioned to Glenn, I said, the shot was a long shot. And we looked at the tape where the bullet struck him and everything. And we tried to figure out if I had really killed him or not. You can't really tell. And one minute I'd look at it and I'd go, yeah, he's dead. And then I'd look at it again, I hope I didn't miss him. We got down there and found the deer and everything and knelt down, and I wanted to touch him and everything. And I thought, it occurred to me how quickly you go from a zero to a hero. Mm-hmm. All you have to find is your deer that you shot. It was my career deer, And I got to enjoy for the last 2 or 3 days just the things that you were talking about earlier, whatever that alchemy is that can happen in a deer camp. Doesn't always, but when it does, it's extra special, and you hear things shared that might not be shared with a priest, and a lot of things that shouldn't be shared with anybody. So, but there you are in deer camp, and so there is something extra special about it, and I want to thank all of y'all for making it available to me for the last few days. It's been wonderful.
But it's been really special to watch you. And then this morning walking in and there's a little extra twinkle in your eye.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, you played a big part in that.
Oh,
this,
yeah.
This farm.
That's the fun of having it. That's the fun of working on it, is to watch other people enjoy it. I mean, whether it's Flip or you go to the other end of the spectrum, my 3-year-old grandson that just wants to ride down to the creek and take his shoes off and look for whatever we're looking for, acorns or fossils or clamshells or...
You know, what you said there resonates with me a little bit about young people, really young people like your grandson or teenagers or whatever in hunting camp. It's amazing. They get to see their parents or their fathers mostly for the first time as they react with their peers.
Yes.
And so they get a chance to evaluate their parents among their peers, which is a unique experience for kids, and not a place not a thing that they get to do every place. It's hunt camps where the telephones are not ringing, there's no fax machine, there's no big deal involved. It's just everybody at their happiest moments, and you get to see your parents, how they participate and how they react, and
You get to see him be a guy.
yeah, not a parent.
I remember,
Yeah.
not a parent.
Yeah.
I remember being on a dove hunt. I was probably about 10. And at the end of the dove hunt, you know, everybody sits on the back tailgate and everything and talking and gathering birds. And one of the guys said to my dad, he said, Jim, let's shoot each other's hats. And so my dad said, all right. He said, I'll throw mine first. And my dad took his hat off and threw it in the air. And at the apex of it, the other guy shot it, and the hat jumped and came down. And everybody laughed, and the hat came down and probably had 10, 11 little holes through it. And my dad said, all right, now I get to shoot yours. And the guy took his hat off and threw it up in the air. And my dad pulled on it, and at the apex, he didn't shoot, and it started coming back down, and he didn't shoot, and it hit the ground, and my dad walked over to the guy's hat, put the end of the shotgun on it, and pulled the trigger, and the hat was gone. I mean, just gone. But I remember being a kid going, dang, that was funny. My dad's funny.
My dad's a cool guy.
Yeah, that was smart. So it is like you say, you get to, you know, I remember even being littler than that and going with my granddad or my uncle or my dad, but being fascinated that they knew the woods. They knew when you got off the road and you went down that hill that there was a creek, and they knew how to cross it, and they knew where that went to, and thinking, oh man, they know stuff, you know, and I'm sure my grandson looks at me like that now.
Of course he does.
But you can also see it in little kids when they have that wonder for the outdoors. You know, you're drawn to it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I used to love the way the leaves smell. And I'm out in the backyard yesterday and leaves are falling. And I thought, God, I still love that smell. I love that tannin or whatever it is in the leaves when it falls. And I remember squirrel hunting and smelling squirrel tails. A squirrel tail smells, it's got a unique smell, you know, or picking up the spent shotgun shell and smelling that gunpowder. And so I think
Hoppy's number 9.
you know, it's got a smell, and it's all part of that experience, I think.
So not everything should be mentioned. Tell it just real quick. One time you told your mother something that your dad could do at deer camp that you.
Oh, yeah. And oh, gosh.
And you're about to do it again over a national podcast.
Yeah. And keep in mind, he was a wonderful person, and this was probably in the late 70s, early 80s. But I came home and told my mom that, Mom, did you know that Dad can drink 6 beers?
Yeah. And was that the last time you got to go hunting? Or was that?
Well, and then there was that time I told her that he gave me a little leaf of tobacco out of the Red Man pouch. Yeah. And so that ended the tobacco habit for him. So maybe that was a good thing.
Toxie, what about you and Mr. Fox?
Oh, I was just thinking about one. So I think maybe I was 6 or so, and 5 or 6, and he had taken me to a hunting camp around all of that for the first time, and we were driving we lived out in the country on the farm, so we were coming back into town. I think I can still remember that, but and I listened to their story about it, so I have one little cuss word in here I'll have to say, but it's not too bad. Anyway, I was standing up, but that was before the day of child seat, so they weren't doing anything wrong, but I was just standing up in the seat in between them, in the front seat. I think he was in his truck, and we were just about back to town. We're close to where the school is there now, Bobby, and it was just a bunch of brush, and we had them back then, and a covey of quail flew across right in front of the truck. I mean, and one almost hit the windshield and whatever, and I said, "Look at him haul ass, Mama." And she cut his eyes over him, didn't say a word, and he just kind of put his head down. And when I got back, he said, "Hey, look, you gotta," and he gave me the whole thing about, what goes on at the deer camps. He's at the deer camp, son. You gotta be careful in front of your mama now, don't be carrying those work. Anyway, he didn't get on to me a lot, but I still remembered at the time. I was like, what's the big deal? That's what I heard him say.
Yeah.
At deer camp.
Yeah. So Jeff, I wanna ask you, you've told us before the story of your first deer and how you remember it so much. I'd like you to kind of hit on that just a little bit, but then I'd like you to take us to the most recent buck that you've killed, and let's talk about what's happened in your life, your attitude toward hunting, this farm, all that between that first deer and this last deer.
I mean, it was really it's funny. I was telling Flip before we got on the air here, I could take you back and show you where the first deer track I ever saw was. I was just fascinated. I was like, oh my God, there's a deer here. Because we didn't have deer in Georgia. And so I decided I was going to hunt a deer. That's all I knew about deer hunting, was I was going to hunt a deer. And I got pallets from behind the Kroger and would put them in trees that would hold a pallet. Nothing thought about the wind, a food source, a bedding area. I didn't know any of that stuff.
Just a good tree to put a pallet in.
A good tree to put a pallet in. And I hunted 2 years. I hunted 2 years before I saw a deer. And at the end of the second season, I saw a doe running through the woods. And so the third year, I went up and opening day, I climbed up, had a little Winchester 30-30, and climbed up in my little tree with my pallet up in there, and I don't know, it was probably 30, 40 minutes after daylight. It was kind of on a tree was on the edge of an old logging road, and I looked down through the leaves and I see something moving. And at that point, I'd been 100 times and hadn't seen a deer, so I knew it wasn't a deer, and I'm like, what was that? It got to be a squirrel or something going down that road. And it moved again, and I went, oh my word, it's a deer, and it's close. And it moved a little bit more, and I went, it's a buck. It was a 5-pointer, had a little fork horn like that, and had a brow tine on one side, dark colored horns. And I shot him at probably 20 yards, and he went right down. And my buddy was hunting right up the hill. Well, we didn't see deer, so he knew I'd just killed myself, or something, shot myself accidentally. He came running down the hill, and there was a buck laying there. And we were so excited about that. So, I mean, we're like 16, jumping up and down, hooping, hollering. He's like, how'd that gun shoot? 20 yards. I said, oh, man, it's a tack driver right on the money and all that. And just the sheer joy of dragging that deer out and putting it in the truck and taking pictures with it. And good granny, for years, I had that rack. I did cut the rack off and clean the skull plate. I had it sitting on my bedside table, and I'd look at it just about every day. I mean, that deer just meant the world to me. Then I go, a few years later, I was up near Rome, Georgia, in Cave Spring, and went to my uncle's place and shot a racked 8-pointer, which I was sure was the Georgia state record. Mm-hmm. So sure that I left it on the back of the truck and drove through the town of Cave Spring several times just so people could admire it. And that's probably about 100-inch 8-pointer, but I was sure it was a state record. And then I got into comedy, and then all of a sudden I'm working every weekend of my life. And so I went through a lot of years where I didn't get to hardly ever deer hunt because I was always on the road and gone. Through the years, shot a lot of big deer with a gun. And then Glenn and my brother and everybody was bow hunting. So I shot a 183-inch deer out in Texas with a gun and came back to the farm. And the next weekend I shot a 138-inch buck with a bow. And the buck with the bow, I sat up there and shook so bad I could not climb down a ladder stand. I was just shaking so bad. And I thought, this is how I want to feel. This is how I want to feel when I shoot a deer. So I decided in that moment, I'm going to be a bow hunter. And, I've been very fortunate to shoot now some really big deer with a bow, a moose with a bow, elk with a bow. And the last deer I shot was a doe. And it's still, that feeling is still there, And that's what I told a friend of mine that was kind of anti-hunting. I said, you think we go out there and we want to shoot every deer we see? I said, in the course of a deer season on my farm, I probably see 1,000 deer. You know what I shoot? I shoot a few old mature does and an old mature buck, whether he's big or he's just old and mature. There's something about killing an old buck. It doesn't matter what he's got on his head because he's just been a survival machine for all those years.
Yeah.
And I said, I shoot less than 0.05% of every deer I see. But I still get, if one runs across the road in front of me and I've seen a million whitetails, my heart still skips a beat. And I'm like, oh, no, right across the road, no, whitetail, and I just feel really blessed to have found something in my life that has brought me that much joy. And it's fun to have a place where you try to make a perfect home for them. Kind of, Glenn and I run under the idea that, hey, let's make this place where they don't want to go nowhere else. They don't want to go across the line because they got everything in the world they need right here. And give them a little of the same that they've given me through all these years.
Well, the habitat looks fantastic.
Oh, gosh.
Riding around, I'm just super impressed.
Oh, yeah. All the early successional habitat and, broadleaf weeds and native grasses Flip was talking about. And it's got it all.
The native, that's one thing people, it's wonderful to have pretty food plots, but if you ignore your native, you're cutting the deer short. So
was there a point in your hunting career where you realized, I've killed a few, and my buddy's here. Glenn, let's make sure we put him on. I mean, I can see that in you, but what was there a physical? Do you kind of remember that you maturing to a point and saying?
Yeah, it's definitely mature. And I think there's stages of a hunter like that. It's, You kill a 5-pointer, then you want to kill a 6-pointer, then you want to kill an 8-pointer, then you want to kill a bigger 8-pointer, and we all go through that. And for a kid that, like, I remember being 15, and there was a picture in Outdoor Life of it was a deer in Texas, and it was this big, pretty typical 10-pointer, and underneath the picture it said, this buck is record class and he's still out there. And this is kind of embarrassing. I thought there's one deer in America that's record class and he's still out there. I didn't know. And I cut his picture out, and it had it on the bulletin board in my bedroom. And I would go, that deer's I don't know.
Still out there.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get to go to Texas, but that deer is out there. And nothing in my life ever made me think that I would shoot the kind of deer that I've shot, especially in my home state of Georgia. And it's a thrill, and you look at them on the wall and go, "Holy moly, what a fun morning that was," or what a fun hunt. But actually, I take to see some kid come down here and shoot their first buck, and it's a 7-pointer, and they just beaming ear to ear, sitting there, and you're like, hey, that's every bit as cool, because he's going to remember that day his entire life.
Yeah, he will.
Just like you got me to tell the story of mine, and that's been 50 years ago, and it's just like it happened yesterday. That kid's going to tell that story for the rest of his life.
Flip, I'm looking at you, and Glenn, I'm going to come to you next with this same question. But what do you think it is about deer that just make us all, we are so in love with them? We go to such extremes. When we look at what Jeff has done here at this farm, I mean, he's on the far end of a spectrum. People do crazy things for deer.
Well, they do crazy things for deer, but deer are the American animal. I mean, all the deer species, that's the American animal when you stop and think about it. And when you think about it in that light, there was a time in the history of mankind when we depended on them for everything, for food, for clothing, for tools. We used their bones and their teeth and their antlers for tools. We used their sinew for rope. We used their fat for different things, and soap. And you just go on and on and on. And we depended on them for centuries and centuries and centuries, until I got to the point where, and you sort of made this point when you said, you're here to make things better for deer. Mm-hmm. Now they depend on us for everything. And so the roles have switched, and it's up to us whether or not we're going to be good stewards and repay them for centuries and centuries and centuries of supporting us. And obviously, this guy has figured out that he's going to do that. And look around you, he's really doing it. But I think that when we're in the presence of deer, at least when I am, I can't help but think about those things. Plus, they're delicious.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Glenn, I'd love for you to step to this mic right here. You've been a guy that has guided hunters for a long time in a lot of different scenarios. You've seen a lot of different things. What do you think? What you see people react? What is it? What do you think?
Well, for me, Bobby, I think the most unique part of a deer, a buck, is his antlers, of course. Every one of them is uniquely different. You go look on anybody's wall, there's no two of them the same. Kind of like, they say no two diamonds are the same. Well, there's no two whitetail the same, and each one of them have their own characteristics. The way they develop, the way they change, the way you can help them along that path, the growth, their lifespan, and what you can do to try to manipulate that and make it as good as possible. And none of them's the same. I've seen deer go from, a 10-point as a 3-year-old back to an 8, and then jump from 4-year-old to a 12-point as a 5-year-old. So I think that by itself is what makes them just uniquely different for me.
In the pursuit of these antlers, and the antlers are what get us so excited. You think when you see a big deer out in the field and you see those antlers, it's hard not to think about anything but those antlers.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it kind of sticks in your mind, and you just keep reflecting on that. But what I don't even think Mr. Flip realizes, there's in that spot where his deer dropped, we were within 20 yards of where Will Smith fell. So to be a part of that hunt, which is, real special to me, and then to be there with Flip this morning, it was icing on the cake for me.
Oh, wow.
And think back 200 years earlier, or
How many
or
deer?
2,000 years earlier, and there's a Native American out there skinning a buck right there on that place. How many people have felt that within that same little area over time? And I heard a thing this morning talking about, I was listening to a sermon on the way down, but the guy was saying, when you fall in love with somebody, you not only want to do the things for them that they like, but you want to eliminate the things that they don't like. And as you were just talking about that, I thought, well, I must kind of be in love with deer, because I not only want to give them the things that they like, I'm trying to eliminate things that they don't like. I just want to make their life, get rid of the bad and give them more good.
Yeah.
Get rid of the bad in the same way you would do with your wife or anybody else. It's to eliminate what they don't. And I love them. I love them. God, I love dogs, but I think I love deer more than any animal. It's kind of like comedy. The thing I've loved about doing stand-up comedy is you never figure it out. After 40 plus years of doing it, I still don't know what people are going to laugh at. You think you would after that long, but I'm wrong all the time. After 50 years of chasing whitetails, I still ain't figured them out. Sometimes I think, well, they're not as smart as we give them credit for. And then a week later, I'm like, they're way smarter than we give them credit for. But,
You're exactly right.
but
there.
I love that about them.
It's just the chase, the growth with them. I've never, just like Jeff said, you think you know, but you don't.
Yeah.
And it's just that progression over time. And I don't think we'll ever have all the secrets and unlock all the codes to just growing, giant deer. But it's been a fun journey.
I'm just impressed with the way that with you two, that I've watched Glenn for a number of years. You show up with some folks and he treats everybody equally, and nobody's getting any special. He's busting his tail to make sure everybody has a great hunt. And you're sharing this, and you're talking to them going in. Here's what to expect. Watch this way. Wind's going to be. The thermals are doing this. Here's why we're here. You're teaching them while they're there, and then the same thing with you. I've been around you the same way. You enjoy sharing this place with others in the same fashion.
People passed it down to me. I always say, if you want to be a musician, you go to music school. If you want to be an actor, you go to acting school. There is no stand-up comedy school. The way you learn to be a stand-up comic is hanging around with stand-up comics. I also think that's the way you learn to be a great hunter and a great farm manager and a great woodsman or a great fisherman, is you're learning through the years from other people that have gone before you. So that's the fun of having acquired that knowledge, is turning around and handing the baton to somebody else. Because as a bow hunter, I can tell you most of the lessons I've learned, I learned them the hard way. It was by screwing it up first and then going, okay, I need to wait till their head's behind a tree before I draw back, and whatever. So, anything you can, that's what we do with our kids. I'm a mental image person, and I just picture us walking down the road, and you point back to your kid and going, there's a hole right there. Now you can step in it and suffer the consequences, or you can go around it, but I'm going to point out there's a hole right there in the road. And most of the time they got to step in it and learn it the hard way for themselves. But that's what we do.
Toxie, I thought you were trying to interject something. Have you got something to add to that?
The point in listening, first of all, I just have to say that I feel privileged to sit there and just be able to be in y'all's presence and listen to the conversation. But it just helps me to, when you listen, you can reflect more. Is that, what we've all here learned, and I think what we would learn if we could teach people something, or you guys are such a great example for people to listen to, is that, I don't want anybody to take this wrong out there, but killing is not the point of all this stuff we go crazy about. It really isn't. And, to have your best life possible with the outdoors is not it's the caring for everything that gives you such a great life. And that's, first and foremost, all your buddies, your friends, your family stuff, and then a place. I mean, you don't even have to own the place, but the act of caring for it gives you 24/7, 12 months out of the year, things to do and connect and feel. I mean, it's just such an attachment to the earth we live on when you do that. And guess what? The killing is a result of that. And the best and most enjoyable, quote unquote, killing is when it is part of that process. And you've not only maybe, Jeff, when you've actually helped raise the deer, how much more fulfilling it is. But at the same time, you feel like you did it in a way as part of the management process, making everything better. So that's what we call being a gamekeeper. But my short version of that is killing's not the point. Caring for everything is the point.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So look, Glenn, while you're sitting here, Jeff, would y'all tell the story of the snort-wheeze in the restaurant? Can we hear that?
Yeah, Jeff was started off.
Okay, so this is going back a long time ago. But remember, because the first calls were all grunt calls and stuff, and then you might have had a few doe bleeds. But then the snort-wheeze call came out, and that was the rage. And so I'm in Atlanta one night in a restaurant eating dinner with my wife, and Glenn had this big old buck that had gotten underneath his skin, and he had to kill him. And so he's in a tree, and I'm in this restaurant, and my phone rings, and it's Glenn. Well, I got to answer it because I'm thinking, Lord, is he falling out of a tree or whatever? He's by himself. And I'm like, hello. And he goes, hey, what's that noise? What's that noise? That wheeze noise they were talking about with bucks. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, I can't remember what we called that deer. What was his name? I can't remember. But he was a big old mature fat.
Yeah, it's
buck.
like a 7.5-year-old.
Yeah,
buck.
he was old.
Just a bully.
And just a bully. Wanted to fight everybody. He goes, I just had him underneath my tree, and now he's walking off down the hill. He goes, what's that wheeze noise? And I said, he goes, make the noise. What's the noise sound like? So on my phone in a crowded restaurant, I go, and he goes, okay, thanks. And he hangs up. And everybody in the restaurant's looking at me like, did this guy just have an asthma attack, or, what's going on with this guy?
So I get the noise from Jeff. We had watched somebody do it, and it was
watched
relatively
on a
new.
show,
So
yeah.
as soon as Jeff made the noise, I remembered then, I said, and that buck turned around on a dime and come running right back to me, and I smoked him at 15 yards.
He hung up the phone, and then he called me back like 10 minutes later.
Got him.
Shot him right to the base of the tree. So.
Have you ever heard anything like that?
No, that's a great one. That really is. That's a winner.
That's a sound you don't hear an awful lot of, but when
Yeah.
you do, it's intense.
Yeah, that's right.
I've only heard it, I bet you just maybe 4 or 5 times in the woods.
And I've used it several more times. I mean, sometimes it'll work, and sometimes they'll just take off on you. But that particular night, the way he was acting, in fact, I think I had heard him snort wheeze, but I just couldn't get I heard something, but I didn't know what exactly it was. So I called Jeff because he's walking down the hill, and I had a minute. So I popped the phone out, gave him a call. I said, what's that snort wheeze sound? He said, so I hit it on him and dude, it worked. He was there 5 seconds.
Well, and I will tell you, since we're talking about deer and like you think, I knew nothing in the beginning, but what that's one of the things that I've learned over my lifetime is just like human beings, they have different personalities. And like he's saying, some of them you snort at and they turn around and go the other way. There's bucks that don't want to fight. They don't want to mess with it. It's like, leave me alone. And there's some that want to fight everybody, just like human beings. And so, I don't know. Initially, I thought, well, they all just act a certain way. They don't. They have their own unique person. You've got homebodies, just like human beings, and you got Rambling Man that wants to go everywhere. And but that's part of the fun that's part of the mystery of it, figuring them out.
So do you see if a deer develops a personality? If you have a deer and he's 6, you've watched him from being a young deer when you could recognize him, and you watched him as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. Do you see that personality change as he gets older?
Typically not. As far as like aggression, a lot of what I've kind of noted over the years is that if you've got a particular deer that's kind of standoffish, passive, but he's got a huge rack, or he's got the potential to have a huge rack, that kind of works in his favor, especially around here with the brain abscess problems that we have, because if the less aggressive they are to rub and to fight, then the less chance they are to pick up that disease or that infection.
Well,
so
that's second deer right there.
I was going to tell you that story. That deer, as a 5-year-old, I saw the deer. He was down below me, crossing through a little draw. So I pulled out my grunt call. I grunted at him. The deer stopped and looked at me and just took off running. Was no other deer around. He just heard, I know he didn't see me, and all he heard was a grunt, but he just hauled butt. So it was a few weeks later, I moved out to another area in that same general area and put out a decoy. The deer come out, stepped to the edge of the field. I said, there he is. When he sees his decoy, he's coming. Looked at the decoy, turned around and hauled butt. So disappeared. That was a 5-year-old. The next year, we didn't see him at all. And then Jeff's brother, Jay, we had a stand just below the lodge down here, and we planted all that switchgrass y'all sent us. And so we got it established, and we didn't know that deer was anywhere around. Jay went down there and sat in that stand, and heck, it was that afternoon, smoked him.
But we already knew by then, if you see this buck,
don't grunt, don't rattle,
don't do anything, because he does not want any part of confrontation.
That's it. That's a personality trait that he developed. How about y'all learned it? Wow. So, Mr. Flip, I want to look at you now and ask you a quick question. I think the meat plays a big part of your hunt, the taking home the meat.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, do antlers figure into your equation?
Oh, I guess they do. But not as much as I think other people care about them. I've grown up and hunted most of my life in Florida where we have no antlers. The dirt there is terrible. Yeah. There's no protein. The deer are small. When I walked over and looked at this deer this morning, I think I said to Glenn, that deer's as big as I am. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that he really was. He weighed exactly what I weighed. And I had never dreamed of killing something that size in a deer.
Yeah.
And so no, my wife is a health nut. She doesn't like to buy meat in the store. She doesn't believe that animals that are raised for food are treated well. And I believe she's right. And so she simply won't shop in a store for meat. And or poultry. She really feels strongly about how chickens are treated. So we wind up, she and I, just the two of us and guests, we eat 7 or 8 deer a year. But they're generally Florida deer. And antlers are not. I think if I'm not mistaken, the state requirement for killing a legal buck is that he have 3 on a side as a minimum. he could have nothing on the other side. But as long as he has 3 on a side, he's a legal buck. There's no main beam length. There's no outside spread, inside spread. There's none of that. And until very, very recently, I mean, we have so many deer there, you could kill 2 a day, no season limit. So you could kill 2 every day of season from mid-September to mid-January. That's how long the season is. And you were able to kill 2 a day. So to kill 7 deer in a season for someone who hunts a lot and hard, not a big stretch. But if you wanted to kill antlers in Florida, you'd be lucky to kill what would be a cull buck on this ranch.
So that makes me ask that today when you're sitting there in your Yeti chair and Richie touches your shoulder.
Oh no, I got a buzz.
Did you get an eyeful?
Oh my God! Well, I mean, yeah.
When you saw him, it was you knew.
It was game. It was game on, and I knew that he wasn't a trophy buck for this ranch. I mean, I could tell that because I see what's on the walls.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, it was love at first sight for sure.
And that's all that matters.
I hear that back in the day when you first bought the farm, that there was a poaching incident. It sounded kind of like a scary deal. We don't have to say anybody's names at all, but is that a story y'all could tell? It's one of the more intense stories I've heard.
I love drama.
Yeah, except it was real dry, and it was probably the first year or 2 we had the farm.
You had it 6 months.
6 months, and
so I was thinking that was the shortest job I've ever had.
I thought, and I thought I'm going to sell my farm. So it was a Sunday evening, and you hardly ever hunt. But I had the girls. We had the whole family down here, and we had company or something. And they left, and I said, before we go home, I'm going to go down there and sit in a tree. And I went down the hill and got in a shooting house. That was when I was still gun hunting, and I'd been in there 30, 40 minutes, and I look and I see a guy walking through the woods, and he walks down the edge of the field, and he's looking around, got on camo, and he sits down with his gun at the base of a tree. And I'm like, what the heck? Who is it's Sunday night? And this is how long ago it was. We had flip phones, and I called Glenn. Were you hunting up at your house? I think you were.
Yeah.
He was hunting, but he was on the other end of the property hunting by his house. And I said, dude, do you know anybody that's on the farm tonight? He said, no, just me and you. And I said, well, some guy has just walked out of the woods, gone down the side of the field, and is sitting against a tree. He said, you can see him right now? I said, plain as day, looking at him with my binoculars. And he was probably, what was that, 150 yards maybe across that field, 200?
Yeah, maybe 200.
Maybe 200. And so he said, all right, I'm getting down. I'm getting in my truck. I'm coming that way. And so the guy's hunting. I mean, he's sitting there quiet, not moving. And I see Glenn come down the hill in his truck, and I'm talking to Glenn on the phone. I said, come a little bit further. Now he's to your left, about 30 yards. Oh, he's looking at you. Now he's laying down. And so I'm watching the guy, and I can direct Glenn, who's been a sheriff's deputy for 7 years, and I'm directing him right to him. I'm like, he's right in front of your truck. Stop. He's right in front of your truck. You can take it from there.
So, yeah, at that minute, I knew we had hit the guy between us. So I'm like skirted the back side of the field, and there's a little drain that he's sitting on the edge of the field. So I cut it when Jeff says you're right on top of him. I cut the truck off. I had stopped at the lodge and grabbed a rifle that I had actually given to Jeff for Christmas, and because I had my bow. And I had loaded it, but I had also called my buddy who's a DNR officer and had him on the way already. So anyway, all part of it. But I stop the truck. I get out of the truck. I get up on back of the truck just to get me some height so I can see down into this brush. So I've got a little advantage now looking down. So I knew the guy didn't know that I didn't know he, I couldn't see him, but I knew he didn't know that.
Did you have your rifle out at this point?
I did. I just had it kind of pointed down at the ground. And I said, "Hey, bud, I see you. You can get up now." So when I said that, he stood up. But he stood up and started walking down the edge of the field away from me. I said, "Hey, bud, you need to stop right there." Kind of getting a little more gruff with him as we go along as this thing progresses. And he didn't listen to me. So when he first stood up, he's 10 yards. And then when he's getting out to about 25 yards, I said, "Hey, stop right there." And so he stopped for a second, paused, and then he turned into the woods and hopped the creek, which put him in the lane. I'm in the road, and he's in the road in front of me 25 yards. Well, when he hopped the creek, I could see the sling of the gun. I thought he had left it because I hadn't seen it to this point. But when I saw that, he stopped, and I said, "Hey, drop that gun where you're at." And when I said that, he swung his rifle up, and I remember seeing him was the barrel, and it just, to me, it looked gigantic. So I showered down. I throwed the gun up and shot, bolted another one in, and when I looked back up, he's trying to find me in the scope. So this don't go on but maybe 15 seconds or so. So I try to go out one side, and he cuts me off. He cuts me off going out the other side. So I jump out the back of the truck, and I start crawling under the truck, and I can see his feet. I can see his legs. I can see his stomach. I pull up the gun, and when I do, he takes off, and I shoot again because I still don't know where his gun, he's still pointed in my direction. So I roll out from under the truck. He's running back up toward the lodge, and I can hear Jeff's barking commands at him too. He can't really see.
He doesn't know I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm in a shooting house. He doesn't know how Glenn knew he was there. All he knows is somebody just drove up on top of him.
And
so all I see from my point of view is Glenn yelling at the guy, and I see the guy bring his gun up, and I hear a shot, and now he just shot Glenn. So I jump out of the shooting house, and I'm yelling, "Law enforcement on the ground now! On the ground right now, law enforcement!" Because I wanted him to know, hey, it ain't just the two of y'all out here. There's other people involved in this. And that's kind of when he started running.
Yeah, he takes off toward the lodge. Well, I knew Jeff's wife and kids were up here, and so I didn't have time to get Jeff. I wanted to get between him and the lodge. So I rushed back up here. At the same time, my buddy Mitch from DNR was pulling up, and I give him, he was coming back from vacation with his family in the car. I said, "Hey, Mitch, I've shot at this guy. He's running back this way. Here's a gun. Just stay up here with Greg and the girls." And I go back down and get Jeff. But now he's on the loose, on the run somewhere in the property, and by the time law enforcement and all get here, we searched most of the night, but we never did come up with him.
That's an intense story.
It was an intense night.
It was an intense few minutes when you think, I just watched my buddy get shot trying to defend my property, and yeah, it's scary because all I know is I see the guy aim the gun right at Glenn, and I hear a shot. And I'm,
it could have been terrible. I attribute the experience in law enforcement and the training that I had to keep me from getting shot. The guy wanted to shoot. He just never got that clear shot he was looking for. But so it turned out as best it could, I guess.
So you're saying if you hadn't had that 7 years of training, that'd have been a different story.
Probably so.
It kind of, to bring it back circle, that guy was crazy about deer hunting enough to trespass on this farm.
And I would think he had a history in doing it, and probably had a reason that either he had been taken to jail before previously, but he sure didn't want to go back.
What is the law in Georgia about armed trespass? Is it a felony?
Oh yeah, anytime you point a gun at somebody, it's aggravated felony.
So you can, but if someone
attempted murder or whatever you wanted to.
So you can use deadly force. Oh, obviously.
Oh yeah. Just like Florida has their stand their ground
Yeah.
law. Same here.
You know, Jeff, Glenn is one of the most interesting people. I mean, when you think about all the things he's been involved in.
One of the most interesting people I've ever met. And I'll tell you why, because, and I don't mean this disparaging to anybody, but like I've met a lot of people that are very formally educated about wildlife. I met guys that are really good hunters. I met guys that are good farmers. He's like top drawer on all of it. He's the best hunter I've ever known. But he knows more about deer than anybody I've ever known. But he knows more about farming than anybody I've ever known. He knows more about fixing and maintaining equipment than anybody I've ever known. And sometimes it's kind of disgusting. You're like, is there anything you're not good at? I mean,
I don't do carpentry.
yeah.
What about comedy?
I
don't do comedy.
I will not do comedy because I take him with me on the road and I'm like, why don't you go out and do 10 minutes? I ain't doing that, you know. But he's just, you know, I think some people, when they find things that they love, they want to learn everything they can learn about it, and they want to be good at it. And some people that it doesn't, and I get that because once I started bow hunting, I didn't want to just be a bow hunter. I wanted to be a bad man with a bow. I mean, I wanted to be good at it. And, but yeah, that's what makes him interesting. He can do just about. You don't like plumbing either.
No, I don't do.
No, you don't do plumbing. But just there ain't many things you can't call him and ask him, and if he don't know, he'll call his daddy, and then you got an answer. Between the two of them, they know everything.
Wow. So. Yeah. Well, guys, this has been really interesting. I enjoy seeing you. Always enjoy looking you in the eyes. You make me I just can't help but smile when I look at you.
And low.
Yeah.
Because I kept your turkey streak alive, and we were down to the last day.
You did. Yeah. So what he's referring to, I had a streak going, Flip, I had a streak 43 years in a row I'd killed a turkey. And I was striking out in Mississippi and Alabama, and our season went out, and the season was still on here. And I got an invite. It was kind of like a charity event, I guess. But Jeff was my guide, and we were successful that morning.
All right.
Yeah, we sure were. So, Toxie, you got anything else to add?
No, I was just thinking about that, how you got that invite. It's more about invite yourself kind of invite.
Well, it was a self-invitation. Like, because he was, you know, he's downplaying it, Toxie, but he was bummed out that his streak was about, because you'd had like just bad luck all year and birds hanging up on you, and you were pretty down in the mouth that streak was about to come to an end, and I don't think we even called. We just sat down there quiet and let the birds work right to us.
I think I yelped a time or two. Now.
You're letting your pride talk for you.
Yeah.
Well, you saved me, that's for sure.
Yeah. What's the streak up to now?
Yeah, so now I think it's like 49 or 50.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So, sure. I
Well,
thought you had a 20 this 1 year.
So what he's referring to, and then this is true. 1 year I didn't, but my daughter killed her first turkey, sitting kind of next to me.
She was sitting with you?
Yeah, she
I'll
was
give
sitting
you
next
credit
to
for
me.
that.
So
I've
always taken a little credit because that was a hard one to pull off too.
Yeah,
so.
you could have killed the turkey.
So, well, looking around the room, Jeff, we appreciate you letting us be here.
You're always welcome here. Toxie, you're welcome here. I'll fry you a bologna sandwich if you'll come up.
I probably did, but you do owe me a trip. I know that to get you here, I've got to have a 5-star resort for artifacts.
Yeah. I'll sleep on the couch, but
I know.
if we could go find an airhead, that'd be fun.
You know, we got a lot of sites. I would love to do that sometime. World slows down a little bit, but I would say there's not a camp, or if you want to call it that, just a location, lodge, whatever, that's more fun than what you have there, especially with your guys. The way y'all's camaraderie and the way you roll in camp and just roll on each other is kind of like none I've ever been around. It's so much fun. Bobby and all of us will tell stories, and we have to go back and be sure we give credit to y'all, Bart, but there's so many good stories out of all that.
You know what that makes me? Blessed.
Yes.
in my wildest dreams never thought I'd own my own piece of property or
Either.
get to share it with so many cool guys and women, and my grandson. And so blessed beyond measure. My cup runs over.
Yeah. And it's great that you recognize that and appreciate
Oh.
that for what it is.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, it just to me, the longer that I've actually had my dream, which is all I ever really dreamed about as far as material possession is having the place. The longer I've had it, the more it's just about the place. It's not even, I tell you, one of the worst things you can do is you have a place and you're comparing it to your buddies. It's mine, the competitive side. There's no place for that in owning a place or taking care of a place. It's about you and the place and the critters and our creator who gave it to us all.
Yep.
That's
it. And with the command, you've been entrusted with something special. So take care of it. Give it your best.
Yeah, I have trouble finding words, to be honest with you, how special it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be, everybody that hears this will know they have, in their own way, with our creator, they have their own, connection with the world we live in. It's nothing like when you get out there and it's just you and the things God created and God.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it isn't great fun to be around a bunch of people and do other stuff too, but boy, for a full life, you just got to be able to go. That's how I get my batteries recharged.
Yeah,
big time.
Me too. I'm like, go sit in a tree and dump my brains out and examine it and throw away what you don't need and put the good stuff back in and keep on going.
Shoot an old doe and be like a kid again.
Yep.
Wow. Well, so Mr. Flip, it's been a pleasure to share a camp with you.
It's been mine.
Get to know you. The rum, we haven't had a chance to share that with Jeff yet, but the rum company, we wish you all the luck in the world with that.
Thank you, sir.
And guys can watch some of your adventures on your YouTube channel.
Absolutely. Flip Pallot Outdoors.
Yeah. Well,
And I hope one of them on that channel will be this episode that we filmed here.
we're going to work on that for sure. We certainly will. And we just thank you for what you've done, the inspiration you've been to so many people through the years.
Oh, gosh.
And
Yes, sir.
and them to me.
Yeah. Toxie, I said yesterday, I told him that if you were here, you would say, congratulations on a life well lived.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And honestly, he just said it, and he's not one to take a lot of credit, nor is Jeff, but not just a life well lived, but a life well lived that's spread to helping a multitude of people a life well lived. Because really, the enlightenment that you can give them, both of y'all, is so important. So they can see. I know it's like taking the blinders off sometimes to hear how someone else's perspective that's got that, like Mr. Flip does. It's so important for people to pick up on that and then apply it to their own life, big time.
Dudley, I'm going to give you the last word.
I don't know what to say, but it's been fun being around all of y'all guys here. A year before my dad passed away, he came to me and said, I found this really cool show on TV. It almost reminds me of National Geographic, but it's these folks fishing, and it's a guy named Flip Pallot, and we would religiously watch that every time it came out. And so it's really neat getting to share a camp with you and
You're the ones.
realize that we're all similar. We all have the same interests, and it's just fun to be outside, whether we get a big deer or not. So I experienced a lot of that this week.
Yep. Well, I'm looking around. I think Glenn, thank you. We appreciate what you've done this week. Richie, you and the electronics, and John Tatum, we appreciate what y'all have done. And so I think it's about time we
Get in a tree.
Yeah.
I was sitting there looking at my watch going, you want to wrap this up because it's about time to go get dressed.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. All right, Toxie, we'll be home as soon as we can. And why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley. Get us out of here, Richie and John.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.